Hi there, my name is Pietie Beyers, and this is a podcast episode of the podcast Loop Hy Maar, which is usually an Afrikaans podcast. My name is Pietie Beyers. As I said, I'm a South Afrikaans speaking South African, but recently we released an episode that had to do with sex and the pressure we put on ourselves. It was released in Afrikaans, and I decided to also now do a similar version, maybe with less disclaimers and unnecessary apologies, and one that's a bit shorter and more direct, more to the point. And I really hope it can help you. The purpose and meaning of this podcast is to hopefully help someone. I wish this is the kind of thing I wish I heard when I was in high school. I'm 33 years old now in a very happy, committed relationship, but I really could have benefited from something like this. Maybe at high school, university, even a few, different stages of my life ever since it happened. And what it is not necessarily sex. It's the first time I really had, I'd say, somewhat of an anxiety attack. I think, our traumas trigger our dormant psychology. I'm not a psychologist, even though I've seen quite a few in my life, and I studied it part-time for some time, and it's helped me a lot. But I had an experience in high school. Well, we'll get into it. The purpose of this is to help you, or if you don't have any issues surrounding, what it really boils down to is I think it's less about pressure or sex and more about trusting our gut and, not feeling like we owe anyone anything, or feel like we need to prescribe to any of our idea of how a man or woman should be. Of course, I'm not going to touch on all aspects or subjects, as I'm not qualified or experienced to do so. I think the underlying message and undercurrent here is to empower you to just, share a bit of my story and show you or tell you where I ended up so far. I want to help you, equip you as people have helped me in my life, but it only came after quite a few, leaps of faith and sort of anxious-filled evenings and days, keeping the secret that I feel like I'm panicking about a space that should be a free space or can be a free space. And took me a long time to work up the bravery to speak to my closest people, my family, and to see someone and to address the underlying anxiety, and also then sort of shape and slowly try and develop a more healthy relationship with intimacy. If anyone is mentioned in this podcast, I'll keep it anonymous, just for the sake of personal security or preference or whatever. Not that this is about other people. It's about me, it's for you. And if there's someone that can relate to this, please feel free to share this with them. I really hope it helps. A friend of mine recently, actually now a few days ago, told such a beautiful story. I was telling her, we spoke about life, and as one does, I listened to a podcast called Creative Pep Talk, and this illustrator from America was speaking about how he used to think as personally, PT, won't necessarily call myself an artist. I always associate artist with like painting and drawing. But he said he used to think that he should create art that impresses people to show how artistically talented he is. And then it took him quite some time in life and experiences and growing up to realize art shouldn't be about art, it should be about life. And that he wants to make art that makes life easier or better for people, hopefully, which is quite an interesting thought to me. And so the friend Augusta, shout out to Augusta, legend. Recently we were speaking about we were sort of riffing on this topic, and she said, I can't recall the exact details, so excuse me if I butcher it, Augusta. But we'll get to the crux of it. I think it was her grandmother went to watch like an opera or some sort of large scale musical production at a festival in Stellenbosch, Western Cape, South Africa. And it was a very I think it was quite a prestigious event with brilliant musicians, almost the academic version, almost I would like to call it like not an academic form of music, but it was probably like very advanced melodies and orchestra sort of symphonies and quite a lot of instruments. And I think it was big. I think there were like, I don't know, let's say 50, 100 people in the orchestra or whatever. It's quite interesting. After the show, the Augusta's grandmother saw another lady, and the lady walked to her and said, wow. She said in Afrikaans, but I'll loosely translate it to capture the essence. She said, wow, isn't this just the absolute peak of civilization? I hope that's the best way I can translate it. Isn't this the best, most advanced example of what civilization and being civil can be? And Augusta's grandmother thought a moment and said, no, I think the peak of civilization is helping someone else feel good about themselves. That completely floored me. Taking the sort of this academic conversation to such a basic level at the risk of not sounding so intelligent or academic or whatever. But they often say, genius is being able to capture what is most simple and true. I love that. I love that so much. And I think that's a beautiful sort of almost pre-segue into this podcast, because this is just the truth. It's not beautiful. It's not a impressive, work of art, which definitely has its place. It's just the truth, and hopefully it makes you feel good about yourself. And once again, if you don't relate to it, but you've got a friend that might, or suspect might be suffering or spoke of similar things, you can share this bit of vulnerability with them. Maybe they relate. Okay, let's get to the point. So I remember I wrote down a few notes, and this is probably going to be shorter than the Afrikaans one, which was about, I think, just over an hour. This one might be quite a lot shorter. Try and make it more succinct, if that's the right word. You know that movie Into the Wild? I think it was a book originally, yes. And the main character is Christopher McCandless. I don't want to spoil the movie, but at some stage he carves out on wood, happiness only real when shared. Happiness only real when shared. Now, whether that's true or not is probably up to, in the eye of the beholder. I just remember since I was very young, maybe 4 or 5 years old, as I said, I'm a white Afrikaans South African that grew up pretty privileged and protected in a loving family later on. Our family, as people do nowadays, not nowadays. Nowadays, it's like, I think more than 50% of families or parents get divorced, or I'm not sure if it's more than 50%, but it's much more common than when I was very young. I used to think it won't happen to my parents. And then sort of our family, the safe haven got disturbed. And I think you don't realize how it affects you. And then, but, it's like one of those things where you're like, no, I'm fine. While you super drunk and tears streaming down your face. This wasn't exactly what happened to me, but maybe in a figurative sense. But I remember when I was very young, when things were still like quite rosy in our family and everything. We used to go on holiday to this place called Kleinbrak, and I remember us walking to the cafe with like our R5 or whatever. If this podcast happens to land up somewhere in the States or Europe or Australia or China or wherever, R5 roughly translates to, well, it's like $0.25. Anyways, this is about 25 years ago, a bit more, and we'd walk to the cafe and we'd buy I'd buy with my R5, I'd buy some sweets, my brother would buy some sweets, we'd go to the beach, we'd swim, we'd play like American football or soccer or whatever with friends, and we'd eat our sweets. And I remember very specifically, and this is not virtue signaling, trying to say, oh, look what a generous person I am, because I definitely have my faults. That's maybe a story and a disclaimer for the Afrikaans episode, but I'm full of faults, as we all are. But I remember the feeling of eating a sweet. I think I often bought 2 of the same sweet, eating a sweet, and then not being able to really enjoy the flavor without handing my brother the same sweet and him also tasting it and eating it. And I remember the actual joy only actually kicked in. The joy of the taste actually only kicked in when I could see my brother also experience the flavor. And that happiness only real when shared. That idea of connection. I think, I've listened to so many podcasts, and it's just, I'm an observer and a student of life, I suppose. And it seems as though connection is a very big driving force for so much of us. Maybe it's because, I don't know, we come from, once we were one, within pre-life or within the womb, we were one, and we were, expelled from the womb in a certain sense, to be able to enjoy a beautiful, complicated, life. But we were disconnected in a certain way. From a person, from a state of bliss, perhaps. And life is about almost, I don't know, there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of learning, and there's a lot of love, and all of that. It just seems to me like connection is quite a driving force for, it's like the currency of belonging, connection, trying to or aiming to become one again. It's an interesting one, life. It's a, tough, it's a old chestnut, tough one to crack. Anyways, lame jokes, here we go. Okay, so this idea of connection, I think belonging, is something that we seek from a young age. Belonging, comfort, fulfillment, all of these things, all of these intangibles that is sort of, is not, I can be 12, 15 years old and say, yes, I'm cool and happy and awesome, but that has no indication of my underlying psychology or emotional well-being, really. So, now we're really getting into it. I was at primary school, and I was the youngest of 3 kids, and I'm by nature, at the risk of sounding arrogant or insecure or oversensitive, I'm just jumping straight in. I was a quite a sunshine little boy, 5 years younger than my brother, 8 years younger than my sister. And I think I was quite a ray of sunshine, obviously with my challenges and insecurities and faults and all of that. But I love chatting with everyone. Like I'm speaking now, early years, like the first 5 years, speaking to everyone, having a jolly old time. We lived in the Eastern Cape. I went to an English pre-primary school. I hope my English doesn't let me down too much in this podcast. And we moved to Cape Town for my dad's work. And in Cape Town, our family stumbled. It started. There was some sort of shock waves going through our family. We went from a deeply protected, loving family to eventually my mom and dad divorcing, which was sort of one of those very traumatic in retrospect kind of things. I think when you in a picture and dealing with whatever the content is inside, you can't necessarily see the bigger picture from an outside perspective or objective perspective. So we were all dealing, rather subjectively. And so I was a good kid in the way that I think I was well-meaning when I was at primary school, quite shy, very shy of girls, talkative, still chatty, but I think maybe stuff at home, maybe, I was, I think, underlying feeling a bit sort of destabilized, whatever. And by no means is this podcast is also there's no blame or anything going to anyone. I'm very happy that my dad and my mom went the way they did. They are both happy now, and I'm very happy for them, and we've got beautiful relationships. So that's, please indulge me just with that disclaimer. So I was at school, let's say about 11, 12-ish. I wasn't necessarily in the cool gang, not necessarily in the non-cool gang, whatever that means. But at that time, you kind of categorize, there's these sort of, I get so exhausted when I think about it. But I didn't necessarily, let's put it like this. In your own mind, you keep on sort of trying to figure out where your place in the social order is. Am I with the rebellious kids? Am I with the diligent, sort of more bookwormish kind of kids? Am I with the kids who don't want to attend class and just like bunk school? Am I with the whatever, you name it, all of those stereotypes. You kind of try or am I my own little group, And at primary school, I think I was somewhere in between everything, trying to be nice with everyone, just sort of trying to be nice with everyone at home, trying to be nice with everyone at school, blah, blah, blah. So, but I was definitely not like seen as the cool kid or anything at primary school. In fact, I used to look in the mirror. I remember looking in the mirror, like at primary school. I remember the feeling, I'm sure you can relate, wherever you are, whoever you are, with the feeling of, of feeling misunderstood. And knowing that you've got some value in you, whether it's kindness, whether it's creativity, whether it's knowledge, whether it's insight, whether it's empathy, whatever it may be, you've got something to contribute or add to the world, but you somehow feel you're either not living it or it's not being seen or found. And it takes some time to realize, well, for me at least, that no one's going to find it if you don't, take a step out of your front door and meet the world meet the world halfway, and at least make an effort to, a brave effort to share a bit of yourself. So, by the way, I know we're not in the details yet, but you kind of need to understand the context to appreciate or understand the lesson in parenthesis. It's not really a lesson this at all, actually. It's just a sharing. So when I was about 12, 13, I used to look in the mirror and be like, I remember very well, after a bath in the evening on a school night, I would dry myself off afterwards. and look myself so close in the mirror and be like, wow, I am not seen. I don't feel seen by my peers, and it's not their fault. It's they just doing their life and figuring it out for themselves. It's like I'm not showing who I am. I'm not the goofiness with inside, the goofiness the humor that we have at home. I feel like that is the embarrassing part of me that I shouldn't share, and that the mask of coolness and sort of placidness, I'm not even sure if that's a word, but like the sort of aloofness is the coolness that I should be at school, and that's how one fits in and isn't like, ostracized or teased or whatever. So you try and be sort of a generic version of yourself just to fit in. But I remember looking in the mirror and knowing there's more. I've got something to give. People might not see it, and that's fine, but I do feel it, and it might come out some way or another. And whatever's the opposite of spoiler alert, it does come out. It's 33 years now, and I feel so much better, and I feel like I am being myself. But that's a bit of a jump. Back to 13 years old, looking in the mirror. Okay, back to school. So one break time, I think it was like there was one girl in class who noticed me, and they were like, she was speaking amongst the girls and being like, oh my gosh, this pity guy, who's just like a gentle mama's boy in the background. I'm not sure if this was what they were saying. This was just how I was in my mind. He's starting to become like one of the boys in a way of the like, oh, he actually wore a nice t-shirt for the day where we can wear casual clothes and to school, and he's gelling his hair and it's looking quite nice. I don't know what the conversation was. I just remember feeling as though for the first time I'm being noticed by the girls. So interesting how a small little thing can have a big collateral effect. And that's also a bigger theme in this podcast that I'll get to now. I remember going home and realizing that, oh my gosh, I know inside of myself, I'm a goofy softy. And I have now been not exposed, but identified as someone that maybe stands out or has something, or there's a 1% attention on me, and I can't show them this goofy soft side because that's going to be an embarrassment. Because obviously at that stage in your life, or myself at least, I didn't have the security to own the goofiness and the softness. Now I'm like all about the goofiness and the softness, and I wish upon you, if that's the right word of saying, is own what you feel and who you are as young as you want. I promise you, that is the coolness. Anyways, the coolness is not a generic thing. It's not a generic form. I think it's the embracing what is individual to you. So I went home and I tried to think, I can't show them the soft, gentle side. That's going to make me vulnerable. People are going to laugh at me and be like, oh, he's actually not cool. He's actually not hard and tough. He's actually just a little mama's boy, sweetie pie. And I thought I needed to build like an image to almost to match, or at least satisfy the attention that I'm getting now, at least to live up to it, to show like, oh, okay, you're giving me one bit of attention, even if it's just even if it's just very subtle. I need to show something that's cool enough that to not expose my gentle spirit. Of course, it's probably needless to say that the girls that noticed me, I was hoping to be seen. And then the moment you get attention, it's like, oh shit, what now? Am I going to reveal my true self or not? So it's like this weird irony. You want to get noticed, but for who you really are. And obviously the girls, there was no malicious intent. In fact, it was a positive thing. It was generous of them to notice me, to give me the time of day. It was, I felt complimented and seen. So thank you to them. And then it's up to yourself how you're going to react. Are you going to, take it in and still try and remain your authentic self? Or are you going to manufacture an image? So yeah, I just thought it's worth mentioning that yeah, they were nice. They were very nice about all of it. So thank you, girls. Thank you. Anyways, and then I, over the next few years, subconsciously, I built this sort of image, of being too cool. Obviously, all just trying to mask and hide and protect my sensitive soul. But I sort of built this more hardcore image. I don't think anyone was ever fooled that I'm hardcore, but I would not speak to lots of people, pretending that I'm superior. Not necessarily so consciously, but I think subconsciously, because I was too scared that they discover my vulnerability. So I would sort of, associate with things that are rebellious or cool or sort of flippant and things that apparently don't care because I apparently don't care. Meanwhile, I cared so much. Build this punk rock image pretending like I'm a sort of rebellious badass. And with that came also the idea of associating myself with acts of rebellion or badassness. So smoking early, drinking early, all of this was really, I think, a manifestation of protecting the soft underbelly of my self. And with that also obviously comes puberty and, people being aware of their, in a way, sexual awakening, I almost want to say. And because I've tried to be this hardcore badass, I was like thinking I probably need to be one of the first guys to either kiss girls or progress sexually in quite a fast manner to show my masculinity to prove this and reinforce this tough image, this toughness that I supposedly have. And one holiday, this is where it sort of really manifested itself in a physical way. One holiday, a friend of mine and myself were at this beach town on the like east coast of South Africa, having a lovely time. We met older girls one night when like drinking at a beach party, and they were awesome. They were obviously a bit older than we were, more experienced in life. But they were very sweet and kind and cool and everything. Cool in a sort of authentic, the nice kind of way, the way that I discovered later on in life. But myself, so my friend had a sort of a intimate experience with a one girl, and I for some reason, he just, I don't want to. This is by no means trying to divulge the details of them. It's just that he sort of hooked up with a one girl. They had a night of, of having a jolly old time. And in myself, the next morning I woke up and heard about this, and I was like, oh, good for you. And then for some reason, I started creating this narrative in my mind that I have to be the first person in our group of friends that has sex. And now I'm about around 15 or 16 years old. Yeah, I'd say around 15-ish. And I was like, I probably need to, if I'm supposedly now this tough guy, this badass that I'm pretending to be, I need to show the world, aka show myself, that I can live up to this hardcore image. So if I can be one of the first people who's buying alcohol or can drink or can smoke, then I should probably be, sexually active at quite an early stage in my life. And I started creating this narrative in my mind of like, okay, we've got 2 weeks left of this holiday. Maybe I can have sex at the end of the holiday with this older girl. And I mentioned it to her one night when I was drunk. And she was like very chilled about it. Very sort of, I think she was caught off guard that I wanted to speak about it maybe. But I remember her as a very kind person. So I remember her sort of playing it down and being like, okay, let's see how it goes. Like, we don't have to, I don't know, just playing it down. And in my mind, I created what felt like this pressure. Okay. Every day would pass, skip a few, every day would pass. We would go to the beach, do whatever. But in the back of my mind, I made this commitment, supposedly to someone else, but it was actually just in myself. That girl didn't expect anything from me. In myself, I made this commitment and this promise that I'm going to have sex in the last night, and I'm going to have to know how to do it and what to do. And from the moment I made this promise to myself, or I said, like, I need to do this, I need to do this, I planted the seed of pressure and expectation, which no one was expecting and no one asked for, and there was no pressure. But in my mind, I was like, I have to do this, otherwise I'm going to be exposed for who I really am, the softy inside. I wouldn't be able to put it in those words at that time, perhaps, but I knew intuitively that's how it felt. I now need to live up to this sexual act or this image that I've created to prove that I really am worthy of being a human and of being seen as anyone. Anyways, every day I would try and go to the beach, I would try and eat, I would try and do everything, but the pressure just kept building. It's all I could think of. How am I going to perform sexually? Do I know what to do? It felt 100% like pressure, and at that moment, those 14 days, 0% like arousal. And I knew, like, when I was not in a pressure, like, besides this holiday, before this holiday, or after this holiday, when I was in a pressure-less situation, when I would have, those kind of thoughts, arousal is obviously something that leads to, wanting to be in a sexual situation, or that takes you in that direction, not pressure. Anyway, so the pressure clouded any form of curiosity or interest or arousal 100%. And I became more panicky. Every day would become worse. I wouldn't be able to speak about it. I would feel too embarrassed, because that would be admitting that I'm trying to be hard and a tough guy and being cool or whatever. Not even to my friends. It's not their problem. They were totally fine. It was just me creating this narrative in my mind, because I was shaping this person that was protected from the soft underbelly of himself and his life and his privacy and what's going on at home and whatever. And the evening came. I tried to drink myself drunk, and it was a New Year's Eve, and so it was sort of this peak. This was supposed to be this perfect, New Year's Eve often, ironically has a sort of a connotation of being something that's an anticlimax, because we expect so much of this epic evening, of literal fireworks and sort of new beginnings and whatever. And I drank myself so drunk that day, or I tried to, but the adrenaline within me kept me kind of soberish, which is weird. I had so much alcohol at the age of like 15, which is way too early. I mean, I don't really drink anymore now. And at that stage, you just sort of throw it back without thinking, or I was trying to find myself, I suppose. Wouldn't recommend it. If you do drink, that's also fine. I'm not recommending it or doing the opposite. I'm just giving my story. And the evening sort of progressed, and I was just feeling more stressed. Eventually, the girl kind of said, this friendly, lovely, nice girl, eventually said, like, she's going to bed, or let's go to bed, or I'm going to bed, or whatever. But she wasn't being malicious or being like, it's time to prove yourself. She was like, I'm heading that way. And in my mind, I was like, this means prove yourself or die. And I literally told her, like, okay, I'll be there now in a few seconds. I ran to the bathroom of this. We had this, it was like at this, I don't want to share too many details, but it was like a backpacker's kind of place. I suppose, if I share details, if people recognize themselves in the story, I only have respect and love for all of you. So I'm sure you guys won't, feel bad by it. You guys all did everything. This is you. Thank you for being kind. I ran into the bathroom, the backpacker's bathroom, splashed my face with so much water, trying to, like, not sober up, but just like rid myself of this extreme fight or flight panic. I felt like I need to face it. I walked into the room. She like got into bed. I got into bed, and as we started like kissing, which everything I felt compelled, not compelled. I felt obligated to do this by the voice in my mind. I need to prove myself now. None of this. She obligated me. She didn't obligate me. Is that even a sentence? You know what I'm saying. But I felt like I needed to execute or go through with this narrative that I've projected in my mind. Otherwise, I'm a failure. It's a weird thing. Like, obviously, logically, it's just one level. It's one sexual act. But somehow it feels intuitively, it sort of meshes itself into your subconscious as prove yourself or die, prove yourself or be proven as a failure in life and the universe, and you've got no place here. Because I mean, at that stage, I think your ego and your self-worth is very connected to. I mean, it feels like your lifeline. It feels like who you are. It feels like I am without being. Yeah, it's just I think it's just a time where you try and find your identity. So your identity is very close to your self-worth. So we started kissing, and I was just freaking the. Yeah. You know what I want to say. I don't want to swear because I don't know. Maybe this podcast ends up with 10-year-olds, and I want to be able to share it with you as well without swearing. But I was freaking the hell out. And she sort of, touched my body and started touching my chest and my stomach. And then I was not only paralyzed into a level of I was definitely, just to put it very bluntly, I was definitely didn't have an erection and wasn't excitable and wasn't in a free space of exploration. And no, I was in a state, and I'm speaking of it casually now because it's 20 years later, and I've seen so many people, spoke about it so many times, from a place of panic, from a place of trying to get help, to psychologists, to people. And now I'm at a place where I think I've moved beyond it. Touch wood, it'll always be a part of my life, this part of my story. And I still walk a path with anxiety, OCD more specifically. But I manage it so much better. And that sort of form, that sexual form, is, I've dealt with it and I've walked a path. But anxiety is something that I believe it, it carries on anyway, in some way or shape or form. But there's ways of, minimizing it and managing it, I believe, to a place where life can be awesome. So I remember that moment so well. I completely froze. And yeah, as her hand was like just below my belly button. I don't know. No, I don't think it was actually below my belly button. I don't think she was like directly going for the crotch area. I just think we were kind of like, it was kind of like exploring each other's bodies. And when her hand was like coincidentally or purposefully, which one ever, like in the area of my stomach, I completely freaked out. I was like, what if she goes down to the crotch area and realize like, I am not keen, or I'm not into this. Obviously, at that stage, you're so self-absorbed. I still have moments of being very self-absorbed. You don't think, oh, they're going to see it as an insult towards them. You see it as, oh my gosh, they're going to think I'm a freak, I'm a disaster, I'm an incapable person. That's how it felt. So when her hand came there, I just went, excuse me, I just like froze and sort of stopped for a second and said, I can't remember what I said actually. I think I said something like, I'll be back now. Or just one second. I actually can't remember the words because the words were so irrelevant, but the feeling was so all-encompassing and so immersive and so terrifying. I said something to her, which was like, I'll be back now or something. I jumped out of that bed It was like, this is now like, I think like 1 a.m. because, or yeah, no, this was just, so it was New Year's Eve, but this was like 11. I think this was before the actual, to be honest, I can't remember that kind of detail. It was dark, it was late at night, and I jumped out of the bed and I ran out of the backpackers onto the beach. The beach was right, the backpackers and the beach was close, by each other. I ran onto the beach and I started sprinting in the direction of where my friend's parents, of where the house is where we stayed. I don't know how far this is. I remember telling psychologists and telling myself it was like 7 kilometers. I think it's much less. But running on sand in the dark and under the moon, being 15 years old, you don't really know. It felt like 100% a pure reaction towards pure adrenaline. So I don't know how far it was. I don't know how long I ran for. All I remember was sprinting like my life and the world and the universe depended on it. Because at that moment, it felt like it. And to me, it did. I sprinted so fast and so intensely. I remember the sweat. I don't know if I've since, created the story, it's sort of developed further in my mind. But I definitely remember running in the moonlight on the hard sand, sprinting and breathing so heavily, but not being able to stop. Fight or flight, flighting for my life, flighting with an L, flighting for my life, freaking out, experienced the most insane anxiety ever. Eventually, after I don't know how long, getting home in the most insane breathing anxiety fit and trying to before even trying to absorb what just happened, just trying to escape where I came from, that feeling. So this moment triggered what I later found out was OCD. And so in those days that built up, or those days, please excuse my broken English at times, but those days that preceded this event, I was obsessing about, oh my gosh, how am I going to have sex? How am I going to pull it off? Am I going to be good, right, perfect, whatever? Am I going to just be aroused? And I remember obsessing about it so much, and that the obsession came along with panic. And then later that I would that I would tell myself certain things to calm me down, which later on I realized there's compulsions, things you do to calm your obsessions. Like little rhymes you tell yourself to temporarily reassure yourself, but this is a temporary reassurance, and it just gets worse if you give it attention. Well, this is how my OCD works, and I think OCD in general. Don't take my advice word for it. If you have mental health challenges, please see a psychologist, a professional. And if you can't afford it, maybe someone. There are psychologists at state hospitals. You just might have to wait a bit longer, I believe. Anyways, so this, I think, kick-started and really triggered this traumatizing event, really triggered that anxiety, that obsessive quality, where anything I would stress about, worry about, whether it was going on stage to perform a play, doing things that I cared about, I would freak out about. So I would, anything that I feel like, oh shit, my value is going to be revealed here, or my lack of value is going to be revealed in this situation, whether it's an oral, where I try and play my guitar in front of people, whether it's not sport so much, because I think I knew I wasn't too great, even though I love sport, because I knew I felt like I didn't have to prove who I am on the sports field. And at other stages where I needed to speak, or where there was an intimate environment where I was like, this is where I show who I am and my vulnerabilities being exposed, those situations I would overthink, and I would go, what if I don't do it right? What if I don't execute this perfectly? What if I don't succeed in with flying colors? And then I would overthink it so much up into a point of where I like start doing this worst case scenario thinking. You know, I know I'm not revolutionizing or reinventing the wheel here. These are things that people have spoken about. I just think that hearing it so simply, and like hearing the story behind the theories and hearing someone's very personal story with it makes it more relatable, I hope, to you. And I'll get to the point, or the thing the gift, if that doesn't sound too pretentious and pseudo virtuous, then I'd like to get to the gift of this talk or this sharing now, very soon. And this sort of obsessive thinking, so this caught onto many different aspects of my life, that things that I care about, the sexual aspect very much so. I am an actor, and in acting, especially stage acting, because that was something that I wanted to do well, it caught onto that very much so, to a point of where it would completely debilitated me. I couldn't and didn't want to act again. I went to study acting and I didn't want to act. It was this weird sort of dichotomy, obsessive kind of thinking thing. And the obsessive thoughts would always have to do with negative kind of thoughts towards myself. And then be followed by compulsions, like, I don't have to perform, I don't have to, stuff that I don't have to do this, I don't have to do this. But like the more I would feed it with compulsions, the bigger the bigger the obsession would get. Anyways, so where's this going to, and what am I getting at? I've realized I haven't even looked at my notes at all, which is fine. This is sort of, it's developed into its own. Yes, where I am now, I've seen many psychologists. Thank you. I've spoken to many people. Thank you. I've been helped by many people. Thank you. I think, something that I wrote down here that I just found quite nice, is other people have helped me save me from my own mind at times. And don't we all hope to do that for each other at times? And don't we all do that for each other at times? I think it's so beautiful. I think there's certain things that connect us all. We're all human. I mean, I'm just looking at my dog by my feet. He's not a human, but he's a part of, he's a life. There's a force of life in him. And aren't we all, everyone that can either connect to this podcast or can, let's put it like this. Life comes in many forms, but the form is all one. And I think to respect and love and be empathetic and caring and compassionate towards all that is life, and inanimate objects too, everything that is around one, and oneself as well, to be kind and compassionate to oneself as well, is one of the greatest challenges, but one of the greatest gifts. And it took me so long to figure that out. Oh, another thing is, because maybe you can relate to this, because I developed this weird relationship with intimacy, this panicky relationship. Another compulsion was I thought the more girls I kiss, the more I prove to myself I am sexually not compatible, capable, or adequate, or I've got adequacy when it comes to intimacy, and it's almost like, I've got a success rate, so I must be normal. So I'm not this incapable freak, which, disclaimer, I realized I'm not an incapable freak. It's a psychological thing. And it's, I know there are people with different challenges, whether it is psychological, physical, physiological. What this boils down to is that don't feel like you ever have to do anything that doesn't feel right. if your mom or your dad or your brother, your sister, or someone tells you, please wash the dishes, and you don't want to, that doesn't mean you can say or should say, no, it doesn't feel right. I'm not talking about little inconveniences that you actually know is right that you're trying to escape. I'm talking about in your moral fiber, in your gut, that you're uncomfortable with, that clashes with your being, with your essence. Listen to that inner wisdom. Listen to that moral compass that you've either been born with, that your parents or family or life nurtured you into. Whatever it is, if you feel comfortable with some certain thing, don't give a shit. Don't give a shit about what other people say or think or supposedly expect. If they let you feel weird about it, if they tease you, if they say, why aren't you having sex and you're already 60, or whether you're married or not, whatever you believe, don't believe, if they have a problem with you making certain decisions that are right for you, they have a problem within themselves. These are the kinds of statements that I used to hear when I was a kid and think, oh my gosh, this is now just like precious little preaching little lessons that the teachers are giving us, that they're just trying to, I don't even know, trying to make the loser in me feel better about myself. And now that I'm grown up, maybe they were trying to make the loser in me feel better about myself. But you know what I realized? The loser in me was always the coolest part in me. It took quite a while to realize that. But your goofy softness is your power. Your vulnerability, the person you are, the person who's listening to this now, who's went on this journey with me, who's still interested, or who's just had patience with me, this person, that essence, that knowing, that pure version of yourself, this, who's listening now, this is your strength, this kindness. Be bold with this. Own this. That also means being kind with people. And that also means being kind to yourself. That's giving a chance to this softness. That is realizing that the softness, owning the softness, is much more impressive than pretending the hardness. You know what I'm saying? And I've realized that because I've walked the path. I've walked the tough path. And now I'm the softest version of myself, but I know I'm the strongest. I'm not scared to share this because I know it's the truth. It's like, I know I'm not a fighter, right? If you talk about literally fighting. But I also know I'm not really scared. I used to, maybe when I was 13, I used to pretend I can fight. I would be able to fight, but I would avoid any situation where I would look someone in the eye and be very direct to them because I wouldn't come from a secure place. Now I can look someone in the eye because I don't know if I can fight, but I know when I hit you, I'm going to hit you with the truth. Even if my lips trembling. So it's a long way of, yes, my story finds itself detailing in OCD and performance in many more ways than one, and pressure. But in a deeper, bigger, maybe more universal sense, your details, I'm sure, might be very different. But what I want to say here, and I can't necessarily capture it in one strappy, catchy line, but the part of you that feels weird and awkward and unique and dysfunctional or just odd, or the part of you that you're trying to protect, right? I'm not saying, with all due respect, if something bad happened, that you need to tell everyone about it and that's now your driving force and your beacon of hope. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if there's a soft, gentle side to you that you know is good and wants to smile and wants to be seen and wants to share kindness and goodness, don't let that die. Have faith and hope in that part. And remember that part will find its way. That part is alive. That part is allowed to be alive. And that part, I believe, is the most beautiful version of you. So feed it. Keep on giving it water. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight or in one day. It might take years. It might take a lifetime. I'm still busy. But what I have learned is by being more honest with myself, to myself, not being afraid of being the self that can laugh at myself, being a bit self-deprecating, being able to be kind, being able to show the niceness, being able to show the softness. Ironically, that's the way that I've become so much stronger. And whether you want to believe that or not is none of my business, really. I know what I know, and I know there's a part in you that knows everything what I'm saying and understands it. And I want to give you permission, not only permission, I want to give you power, I want to give you fuel, and I want to congratulate, welcome, and invite that bravery of you. Maybe you've already stepped into your honesty and your authenticity. I believe it's a process. I'm not the perfect version of myself, I believe. Hopefully I can keep on getting better. And I wish you all the most authentic, beautiful, satisfying, rewarding happiness and growth, and strength and bravery. All in all, be you. And if anyone has a problem with that, then meet them there. Don't decide not to be you before you give it a try. Okay. Much love. Yes. Much love.